Well, it was worse than we thought. Those are the words of journalist Matt Taibbi, who says the Russian collusion hoax was built on 4 pieces of faulty evidence from the very beginning. He just wrote this bombshell new report. In brutal document release, the Russia hoax is finally exposed. So are the walls finally closing in on President Obama and Hillary Clinton? Will there be any arrests? There's the DOJ under Pam Bondi has set up a strike force officially targeting Obama, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and Hillary Clinton for charges of treason. Journalist Matt Taibbi joins us now. Welcome to the show, Matt. Great to have you here. The first time, actually, I think, on Redacted. So one of the great journalists of the world, Matt. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So I wanted you to go through your new bombshell report that you just published. You say it was worse than we thought. Maybe you could lay the groundwork for here. Like, what did we think? And then how is it worse than we thought?
Well, I guess the best way to describe this is the Washington Post earlier this week said that, Tulsi Gabbard was incorrect, the director of national intelligence, to say that there was some kind of conspiracy, that there was no case, that Russia had favored Trump in the 2016 election, and that actually, they didn't fake it, but they got there through careful investigative work. And to a degree, I have been writing about this hidden House Intelligence Committee report about the process by which the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA delivered the whole, Putin preferred Trump narrative in early 2017. We've known about that report for a long time. It's been locked in the CIA for ages, but we thought there would be some real stuff in there in addition to the Steele dossier. But when we open it up, we find out that the conclusion that Russia interfered to help Donald Trump specifically really rested on nonsense. Actually, in each case, it was discarded already rejected intelligence, and they also suppressed a boatload of real intelligence that kind of looked in the other direction. So it's worse than I thought. I thought there would be a couple of real things in there suggesting that Russia actually really wanted Trump as president. But in reality, it was pretty consistent across the board that they were indifferent on that question.
The suppression piece, I want to follow up on that. The amount of evidence that they suppressed, maybe you could give us some of the highlights of what they suppressed that's pretty egregious, really exculpatory evidence, right?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that's amazing. When you go through this report, the first thing that will strike you is you'll ask yourself the question, wow, the CIA didn't appear to have a whole lot of really good intelligence on Russia generally. They were relying on these little fragments, bits of published reports, third and fourth hand accounts, unattributable sentences, but they did have a couple of real things. Like, for instance, they had significant intelligence from a, quote, confidant of Vladimir Putin, who told them explicitly that he quoted Putin himself on the question they were supposed to be investigating. Putin said that he didn't care who won either way. He regularly pointed out the flaws of both candidates, and he said that no matter who won the election, he believed that Russia was well positioned to outmaneuver either one. That's the word, outmaneuver. So that's not in the report somehow. Now, it's not like journalism. You can't just sort of make a case in a prosecutorial way and selectively leave stuff out if you feel like it. It's not editorial, in other words. This is an intelligence report. You're supposed to give everybody the whole picture, and they left a lot of stuff like that out.
Now, you speak about journalism, and I can't help but think of the NPR whistleblower who specifically said that Russiagate was like catnip to us in the newsroom. They refused to look at evidence that was exculpatory. One of the main things that you'll see when you look at this story is that Christopher Steele had previously been looking into Russian collusion for FIFA World Cup, didn't find it there, and then just kind of replayed the hits in a crappy way. And it's taken us now years to figure out that was just dumb. And it makes me think of the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter saying babies in incubators. Like, why does it take us so long to be able to collectively come around to this dumb manipulation?
I mean, I think it's political, frankly. In this case, if it had been in our interest to say that Christopher Steele was not a reliable source and that he was using sub-sources who, the FBI pretty early found out, for instance, that the P-tape story was not real, that it was, quote, made in jest by people who were sitting around having conversations over beers. These are direct quotes. They learned this as early as January and February of 2017. And yet, you had James Comey going up and testifying with that grave face before Congress, announcing the existence of an investigation into Donald Trump while Adam Schiff read out after he read out the P-tape stuff. It's incredible, that they do this. And it's obviously a political decision that they made to suppress certain things and to highlight others.
Are you still feeling off after the COVID vaccine? Well, you're not alone, and new research backs this up. In a groundbreaking study, Risk Stratification for the Future of Cardiac Arrest After the Jab, Dr. Peter McCullough highlights an alarming rise in sudden cardiac events among young and previously healthy individuals. His study found that tiny hidden patches of heart inflammation, often missed by the doctors, could silently be building up, leading to sudden heart attacks during exercise or sleep. That's why the wellness company created the 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox, crafted with 100% natural ingredients specifically designed to help your body clear harmful spike proteins, reduce inflammation, and support heart health. Don't wait until symptoms strike. Experience the only formula approved and used by Dr. McCullough, a top freedom-fighting doctor who risked everything. Head over to twc.health/redacted and use the code redacted to get a nice percentage off your price, plus free shipping. Again, head over to twc.health/redacted and use the code redacted for a nice discount. Get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Really, one of the biggest offenders here is Director of the CIA, John Brennan. Can you walk us through exactly? I mean, he had CIA authors basically objecting, and he's like, no, your objections are not worthy. I'm going to stick them back in here to shove them back. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so it's even worse than I wrote, actually, because the intelligence community assessment of 2017 that said that Putin favored Trump and that he wanted to help him win the election, that was not like the WMD report in 2003. The WMD thing was what they call an NIE, a National Intelligence Estimate, which is a big formal document that includes all 17 agencies, intelligence agencies, and has a number of safeguards to prevent, for instance, the inclusion of bad evidence and the overlooking of good evidence. This was what they call an intelligence community assessment. It's just an informal document where they told us it was 3 agencies, the NSA, FBI, and CIA. In fact, as we learned, we only learned this week that it was only just the CIA, and it was a hand-picked team by John Brennan. It was 5 authors that he picked, his favorite people, to write this report. And even they balked. In the end, they came to him and they said, we do not have direct proof that Putin favored Trump. We can't write that. They tried to leave out certain evidence. He personally stuck it back in. When they went to him about the Steele dossier and said, we can't use this stuff, it does not meet even the most basic tradecraft standards. The quote in the report is that Brennan said, well, at least it rings true. Rings
true. That is unbelievable. Yes, yeah. It rings true. It's false, but it rings true. It rings true to our fake narrative that we've been creating and pushing out in the mainstream media, the Mockingbird media. It rings true. I mean,
so therefore we can manipulate people. As somebody who followed Rachel Maddow every night from 2017 into 2019, believing that the Trump administration was going to crumble under this corruption. Every single night, I feel incredibly manipulated that A, she didn't do the journalism, and B, this came from government propaganda.
Yeah, I don't know how after the WMD episode, anybody in television could pick up the phone. Remember, this happened instantaneously, right? So the Obama administration, we now learn, decided on December 9th to order this new assessment. That very night, they started leaking to papers like the Washington Post, and instantaneously there were these stories. Putin tried to help Trump in the election. Rachel just grabs that Washington Post story, goes on air with it, and starts running with this narrative that it was a conspiracy and that, Trump was in league with, with all of these people. And, you would think that the networks would have learned their lesson after 2003 that, you can't get over skis with unnamed intelligence sources. Like, it's just not a good business to be in.
Yeah, you would have thought Christopher Steele was a hero based on MSNBC's coverage of this. I want to ask you what happens if these people are prosecuted, because
Comey, Brennan, Hillary,
I see a lot of people
Obama
saying you can't do this because it would become another George Floyd moment for the left. But Trump supporters had to watch their favored candidate, President Trump, be prosecuted by the Justice Department. So do you think that Democrats would coalesce around Obama, even though he's not a candidate? None of these people are running for office, but would it fire them up in the same way?
If it were Obama, maybe, but I can see if they, we know they've opened criminal investigations into Brennan and Comey. Brennan is a deeply unlikable figure. I can see easily even the sort of ruling Brahmins of the intelligence community. I can see them throwing him overboard easily, and it would be hard for me to imagine an organic movement of people getting out in the street to support John Brennan. I just don't think the architect.
I don't know. I mean, Chuck Schumer. It wouldn't put it past a guy like Chuck Schumer to come out and support a guy like Brennan. I mean, how bad is it? Do you think, this criminal investigation, do you think there's enough there that we're going to see these guys walking in handcuffs at some point?
Well, that's the big question, right? Like, I've been told for a couple of weeks now that they're looking at various versions of conspiracy charges and that they think they have enough to go to a prosecutor or maybe call for a special prosecutor. But what conspiracy to do what? It's not clear, right? Like there are some things that look obvious, like there are some perjury issues that seem pretty clear cut. But perjury, the bell's tolled on that. The statute of limitations is already up. So it would have to be some kind of ongoing pattern of conduct. I've heard some things about, for instance, some as yet unreported issues with surveillance during the Biden years that might be tied to some of this Russiagate stuff, but it would have to be pretty creatively done, and we don't know all the facts there yet. So, without seeing the full Monty, like what they've showed us so far, I don't know what the crime is. So far, as one of my sources told me, it's like there's no law in the books against what they did. Like there's no law against inventing history. So
well, they invented laws in New York City to go after President Trump. Maybe they'll invent a law here to.
Well, no, actually, the payment for the Steele dossier that came out of campaign finance is the same thing that President Trump was prosecuted for the Stormy Daniels non-disclosure agreement. So this is not an equal justice under the law, but I don't know if I want to go through that again, because the Stormy Daniels case was so taxing and maybe not the best use of our Justice Department.
Or as David and our team says, what about election interference? Actually trying to throw a U.S. presidential election. I mean,
well, by that time he had already been elected, I believe. What we're talking about, the majority of this corruption.
This would have been an ongoing process, though. I mean, because the conduct here goes back to at least the middle of 2016.
Yes.
for some of them, right? So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I certainly don't know anything about election law. So it's not clear what the charges would be. But I think my understanding is that they're looking in another direction for something more serious. But they don't have it, I don't think, yet. But they're clearly trying for it. Like, I think they understand it's not a public relations issue anymore, that they have to get charges.
Yeah.
Matt Taibbi, great reporting as always. Great to have you finally here on the show from Racket News. Matt, great to see you. Thank you so much for your
One of
great
our
work.
favorite independent voices. We've been keen to talk to you for a long time. It's really a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for your bravery.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.